You tell yourself daylight is safe, that whatever's out there loses its power when the sun rises. But what if that's the lie? What if the light doesn't protect you? It just lets you see it coming. I woke up on the floor, my head pounding, my throat dry. The mirror was shattered. Shards of glass littered the hallway, glinting in the morning light like tiny, malevolent stars. I didn't remember breaking it. Didn't remember much of anything after that voice. But the pieces were there, scattered across the floor, sharp and real. I stayed there for a long time, staring at the wreckage, trying to convince myself it meant something. That maybe, somehow, breaking the mirror had done at something. But deep down, I knew better. All I did was cut my hand open. The figure wasn't in the glass anymore. It didn't need to be. Eventually, I forced myself to move, brushing the glass into a pile with trembling hands. The shards seemed to hum faintly, vibrating against one another like they were alive. I stopped halfway through, my breath hitching as a sliver of glass caught the sunlight just right. A reflection, but not mine. It was just a glimpse. A faceless shape flickering in the shard before disappearing. I stared at the piece of glass for what felt like forever, half expecting it to move again, but it didn't. It was just glass. Just glass. I tossed it in the trash and went to work. An odd feeling hung in the air of the store that day. The fluorescent lights buzzed louder than usual, casting harsh shadows that seemed too long, too jagged. The customers moved slower, their faces paler and more drawn, like they were all carrying some unspoken weight. Maybe they were. Maybe I wasn't alone in this mess. Maybe they knew what I was going through. I wanted to ask, to cry out for help. But I couldn't bring myself to. It felt like it didn't want me to. The figure, of course. Even if I did, would they be able to help? Would they be able to care? Or would they take the opportunity to go on about their own struggles and experiences? Tim came in again around noon, looking worse than ever. His eyes darted around the store like he was expecting something to jump out at him. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "It's in the light now." I froze, my stomach sinking. "What do you mean?" He leaned over the counter, his hands gripping the edge so tightly his knuckles turned white. "I saw it," he said. "This morning, broad daylight, it was just standing there in the middle of the road. No face, no shadows, just standing there like it didn't care who saw it." A cold chill ran down my spine. Who was standing there? Where was it? "What did you do?" "It, the figure, nothing. I couldn't do anything," he said. What could I do? It just stood there, and then it was gone. He didn't stay long. He bought a pack of gum he didn't open and left without another word. But his words stayed with me. "It's in the light now." That afternoon, I walked home with my head down, avoiding the windows of passing cars, the reflections in shop windows. Everything felt like a trap, like one wrong glance would reveal the thing I didn't want to see. When I got to my house, I stopped. The front door was open, just a crack, but enough. Enough to know I hadn't left it that way. The street was quiet, too quiet. No cars, no footsteps, not even the faint hum of distant conversation. Just silence, thick and suffocating. I stepped inside, my pulse hammering in my ears. The air was heavy, oppressive, carrying a faint metallic tang I couldn't place. The living room was empty, the kitchen untouched. But the hallway was wrong. The light streaming through the windows didn't fall the way it should have. The shadows it cast were jagged, angular, like broken glass frozen in time. And at the end of the hallway, just out of reach of the light, something moved. I couldn't see it, not fully, just a shape, a presence shifting slightly in the gloom. Who's there? My voice cracked, but I forced the words out. The shadows didn't respond. They just stretched, creeping closer with agonizing slowness. And then I heard it. The whisper.
It doesn't matter. You can't stop it.
I stumbled back, my legs shaking, my breath coming in short, ragged gasps. The shadows stopped just short of my feet, curling and twisting like they were alive. I ran. Out of the house, down the street, not stopping until my lungs burned and my legs felt jelly. I didn't look back. I couldn't. When I finally stopped, I was standing in front of Sarah's house. I didn't plan to go there. It just happened. Her car was in the driveway, the curtains drawn tight over the windows. I knocked, my hand trembling against the wood. No answer. I knocked again, louder this time. Sarah, it's me. Open up. Still nothing. I reached for my phone, my fingers fumbling over the screen as I dialed her number. It rang once, twice. The sound of a whisper on the other end. Not her voice. Not human. There's a point where fear stops feeling like fear and starts feeling like gravity. It's just there, pulling you down, keeping you from running, from thinking. You tell yourself to keep moving, to do something, but you're stuck, weighed down by the certainty that whatever's coming, it's already too late. After the call, I don't remember how long I stood there, staring at my phone, the whisper still echoing in my ears. It felt like the world had stopped. No cars, no footsteps, just silence. And then it came back. A knock at the door, slow and deliberate, the sound reverberating through my chest. My hands shook as I lowered the phone, my breath catching in my throat. Sarah, I called out, my voice trembling. No answer. Another knock, harder this time, more insistent. The kind of knock that demanded you answer, no matter how much you didn't want to. I moved to the door, each step feeling like a mile. The air felt heavier with every inch I closed between me and the sound. When I reached the handle, I stopped, my hand hovering over it. Who's there? I whispered. Nothing. I should have walked away. I should have turned around, run back to my house, locked the door, and never looked back. But I didn't. Something kept me there, some terrible, a magnetic pull that wouldn't let me go. With a deep breath, I opened the door. No one was home. The street was empty, bathed in the pale orange glow of a flickering street lamp. The wind rustled the trees, carrying with it the faint scent of rain. But that was it. Just nothing. Inside was drearily quiet, except for the faint buzz of the fridge. Sarah, are you home? Nothing. The house was truly empty, yet I felt it. That presence, that weight. It came pressing down on me like a hand on my shoulder. Wasn't gone. It was closer now. Too close. I stepped outside, my eyes scanning the shadows, searching for something I couldn't name. The air felt electric, and then I saw it. At the edge of the street, just beyond the reach of the street lamp, something moved. At first, I thought it was just a trick of the light, a shadow cast by the swaying branches. But no, it was there, a shape barely visible, blending into the darkness like it belonged there. In it I could distinctly make out a humanoid figure, smartly dressed, faceless and malevolent. It was watching me. I don't know how I knew, but I did. I could feel its gaze, cold and unrelenting, like it was peeling back layers of me, seeing everything I was, everything I could be, and everything that I feared the most. "Stay back," I said, though my voice was little more than a whisper. It didn't move. It didn't need to. Its presence alone was enough to pin me in place, to steal the air from my lungs. And then it spoke. Not aloud, not in a way anyone else would have heard. But I heard it, clear as day, in my mind. The words slid through me like ice, freezing every nerve, every thought. My legs trembled, but they didn't move. I couldn't move. The thing in the shadows tilted its head, a slow, deliberate motion, as if it were curious, waiting to see what I would do. I don't remember getting back inside. One moment, I was on the porch, and the next, I was in the hallway, the door locked behind me. My heart raced, my hands clutching at the walls as I tried to catch my breath. The house felt bizarre now. The air was colder, thicker, and the shadows seemed darker. They seemed deeper. I turned on every light, but it didn't help. The darkness wasn't gone. It was just hiding, waiting for the right moment to swallow me whole. That's when I saw it. On the wall, just above the light switch, a smear of something dark and wet. I stepped closer, my stomach turning as I realized what it was. Mud. A trail of muddy footprints led down the hallway, each one perfectly formed, leading to the shattered remains of the mirror. I stared at them, my mind racing, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The footprints were too small to be mine, too perfect, like they'd been placed there deliberately. And then I heard it. The whisper, not from the mirror this time, from the walls, from the ceiling, from everywhere. I ran to my room, slammed the door, and pressed my back against it, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might stop. The whispers followed me, growing louder, more insistent, until they were all I could hear. And then they stopped. Silence. But not peace. Something was in the room with me.
There comes a point when you realize there's no running from it anymore. No hiding. No pretending it's all in your head. It's here. And it's been waiting for you. The door to my bedroom slammed shut, though I hadn't touched it. My back pressed against the far wall, my breath coming in sharp, shallow bursts. The shadows danced unnaturally, twisting and writhing like they were alive, converging in the center of the room. And then it stepped through, not from the door, not from the window, but from the air itself. The space in the room seemed to fold in on itself, bending and warping as the figure emerged. It didn't walk. It poured into existence, its faceless form rippling like a dark liquid taking shape. No eyes, no mouth, just that blank, featureless void where its face should have been. And yet, I could feel it staring at me, could hear its voice in my head. No, not just in my head. In my veins. In my bones. "You opened the door." Its words weren't words. They were sensations, vibrations that clawed at my mind, unraveling me thread by thread. Couldn't have. I choked on the words, my throat tightening as if the air itself were conspiring against me.
"You invited me."
"No." My voice cracked, but it didn't matter. The thing tilted its head, its body shifting like smoke caught in a draft, and I knew it wasn't asking for permission anymore. The lights flickered violently, plunging the room into an erratic strobe of darkness and light. Every time the bulb flared, the figure was closer. First the edge of the room halfway,
And then, inches from my face, I couldn't move. My body was frozen, paralyzed by something deeper than fear. Its presence was suffocating, a weight pressing down on every inch of me. And then, it reached out, not with hands, with shadows. Tendrils of blackness snaked toward me, curling around my wrists, my ankles, pulling me forward. My screams died in my throat, swallowed by the oppressive void that filled the room. And then I saw it. Not the figure, not the room, but the doorway. It wasn't there before, but now it loomed behind the figure. A jagged, pulsing hole in reality. It wasn't a doorway to anywhere. It was a doorway to nothing. It was endless and all-consuming nothingness. The whispers rose again, louder this time, a cacophony of voices overlapping, screaming, laughing, crying. Each one called my name, over and over, until it wasn't my name anymore. It was just noise, meaningless and maddening. "Step through," the figure said. Its voice cutting through the chaos like a scalpel. "I won't," I whispered, though the words felt hollow, empty.
You already have.
The shadows yanked me forward, dragging me toward the doorway. I clawed at the floor, at the walls, at anything I could reach, but it didn't matter. The nothingness pulled at me, its gravity consuming everything, swallowing the light, the air, my screams. And then, just as I reached the edge, I saw them. Faces, familiar faces. Sarah, Tim, the others, they were there, in the void. Their mouths open in silent screams, their eyes wide with terror. They weren't gone. They were trapped, suspended in that endless darkness, watching, waiting. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. This was where it took them. This was where it wanted me to go. With a final, desperate surge of strength, I twisted free of the shadows, my body slamming against the floor. For a fleeting moment, I thought I had escaped. But the figure didn't stop. It didn't hesitate. It moved toward me, slow and deliberate, as if savoring every second. The doorway pulsed behind it, a gaping wound in reality, growing wider, darker, more alive. The shadows it commanded surged around me, rooting my limbs to the ground. My struggle was useless, my scream swallowed by the oppressive void. It leaned closer, its blank, faceless head inches from mine, and I felt it. Not its touch, but its hunger. It wasn't just here to take me. It was here to devour everything I was, everything I would ever be.
You are nothing but food for my hunger.
It said, its voice burrowing into my skull, twisting like a blade. The shadows poured into me, a torrent of icy darkness that burned as it consumed me from the inside out. My memories, my thoughts, my very sense of self unraveled, pulled apart thread by thread. I could feel it feeding, growing stronger with every piece of me it devoured. And then I saw it. The others. Sarah, Tim, everyone who had disappeared. They weren't gone. They were part of it. Their faces flickered in the darkness, twisted and warped, their voices screaming in unison, begging me to run. I tried to fight, to hold on to something, anything, but it was too late. The darkness swallowed me whole, and I felt myself unraveling, my existence bleeding into the void. As the last pieces of me faded, I became aware of the world beyond. The town, the people, their homes, their dreams. The figure stood tall now. No longer a shifting shadow, but something solid, something real. It had shape, definition, power. And it was spreading. The doorway behind it surged outward, spilling shadows in the streets, consuming everything in its path. I could hear the town screaming, their cries rising in a crescendo, as the figure moved from house to house, devouring one person after another. With every soul it claimed, it grew more real, more unstoppable. The sky above darkened, the air thickened with an unnatural weight, and the boundaries between this world and the void blurred. I was part of it now, a silent observer trapped within its endless hunger. I could feel it growing, expanding, until there was nothing left but Eti. The town, the people, the world itself, all consumed, all one with the darkness. And as the last light faded, a whisper echoed through the void, endless and hungry. "You're next."